We're going to be trimming all of our blocks down to the same size of 9.5 inches. Some of them have already been trimmed, and some blocks you'll find are very close to the right size. However, sometimes there's just some jaggedy edges that have to be cleaned up a bit. And in this case, and this is a different block, but I'm just showing you this for demonstration. I'm going to find some method of lining things up. So I do have a seam that's going straight horizontally, and I'm going to find some marks on the ruler that are going to follow that line. So I'm going to get a straight square instead of something like that. So I'm going to find some way to line some lines up with some of the seams, and again, it's going to be a two-step trimming. So I'm going to trim down one side and turn my mat and trim down the second side. And this also helps to give us the nice clean edge. Sometimes we've got little strands of fabric that are sticking out, sometimes there's dog ears, and also if there's little threads that get cleaned up, which is also very important. So now that I've got two sides done, I'm just going to turn my ruler, and I'm looking for a square of 8 inches. Now I can use my lines here and here to line up with the bottom of the block that we've already cut. So again, I'm going to cut one side, turn, and I'm turning the mat so that I'm not twisting or trying to cut at an angle that could be dangerous. So this way I'm maintaining complete control over the rotary cutter, so I'm not going to risk injuring myself. With this block, the pinwheel, again, we're going to be trimming this in 2 stages. It's going to be trimmed down to 9.5 inches, so half of that is 4 3/4. So I'm going to find my center point, 4 3/4, and line up. You can see that my 45-degree angle is lining up with that seam, and 4 3/4 is lining up with those 2 blocks. So now I'm going to trim 2 sides. And when you're cutting, you can actually hear a bit of a crunching sound when it's actually going through the fabric, and that's when you know that you're actually cutting through. So I'm cutting half of it in one direction. Again, we're doing it in 2 stages because we don't want to cut off too much from one side and therefore have an asymmetrical block. And now I can use the bottom corners at 9.5 inches, and again I'm lining things up on my 45-degree angle, and I'm still at 4 3/4 for that, from that center point. And now I can make my final 2 cuts. Get this back into place. So we're going to trim all of our blocks down to make sure that everything is clean and measuring 9.5 inches.